Welcome to Charts Today, US Open. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 22nd of October, comes to you from London. And it's a fairly benign opening this on the market in the US today. Firstly, just looking at the dollar. Dollar's actually recovered quite sharply today, so looking strong still. So that strong dollar feature, and we're seeing that euro weakness then kicking in. So interestingly, dollar strength has just shown itself in the early hours of today, and we're seeing against the yen, dollar is still looking bullish on all three time frames. Remembering this is my long term, my medium term, and my short term. So daily, weekly, daily, and 60-minute charts. 1% point and figure, 0.5% log scale, and 0.1% on the 60 minutes. So here we've just got a long term, a medium term, and a short term view, which is why in this instance we're above the cloud on all three time frames. I'm saying we're bullish. Looking at sterling against the dollar, we've seen a sell-off here quite sharply this morning. More Brexit worries coming in. We're medium-term still bullish because the lagging line is below the line cloud there. Short-term very clearly bullish, and long-term we haven't managed to get above there either. So sterling is actually bearish on all three time frames against the US dollar, and we're seeing here downside potential of 126, 128. So anywhere between 1 and 2 and 2.4% downside. Against the euro, sterling is lower as well, so we're seeing that just kicking in. Bitcoin is falling away again, really just struggling over recent weeks and months. We're just seeing sideways action there on Bitcoin, so not really going anywhere. Looking at the futures, the S&P future up 0.4%, the Nasdaq E-mini up 1%. So we are seeing the futures kicking in there, and the Dow pricing is live. All this data is coming off Thomson Reuters Icon. If you're a Metastock Zenith user, you will have the same data. So here we see that the opening on the Dow is such that we're really just very flat indeed, just very little changed. UK markets up, and the German markets up 0.3%. But again, we've fallen away in recent hours as we've got closer to the US opening. We've seen a slight deterioration in the markets there. Just taking a look at some of the commodities, Brent crude is back below $80. That's still bearish, and WTI also bearish below the cloud on the short-term charts. Crude oil giving up quite a lot of its gains. US nat gas back to $3.15, falling quite sharply today, down nearly 3%. And these were the targets that were given here on the shorter term charts. Gold is just holding on at $1,221. Silver, much the same picture. And if we look at US 10-year yields, which has really been the thing spooking the markets of late, of course, apart from trade wars and various other things, high yield is actually been pushing that. We're sitting at 3.18% on the 10-year yield. So with our upside targets of 3.29, 3.22, and 3.33, so we are still pricing those sort of moves in. As I say, all this data coming off Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a private user, Metastock Zenith will give you the same data set. Here I'm moving to just look at the stocks, and here I'm using Yahoo Finance data, which is free, and so that just allows us to look at the markets. We see here world markets. India closed lower, most of Asian markets were up, and Europe is still mostly up. And here we are seeing the Yahoo pricing is actually coming in real time, so we are seeing real-time pricing here. So the S&P 500 is just down very slightly. The Nasdaq is actually now up only 0.25%, and the composite up 0.22%, down, just starting to fall away a little bit. So the strong opening that we were seeing indicated by the futures really isn't actually materializing. Taking a look at the Nasdaq 100, given that a lot of these stocks have been driving this, we can just take a look at the big movers to begin with. JD.com up sharply. China was up 4% overnight, so we're seeing stocks like JD.com and Beidou having a little bit of a relief rally today, but still very, very bearish from the charts. We're seeing very big downside targets, and this is the performance versus the Dow Jones. More than 20% underperformance this year, based at 100. We're now at 79, so we're seeing these stocks actually massively underperforming. JD is actually underperformed by 47%, just really fallen away this year versus the index. So we're really seeing that showing through. Electronic arts looking stronger. Intel, we're seeing quite a lot of the tech stocks looking a bit bullish here. Intel, this is the weekly, of course, daily. So we are seeing that on balance volume falling away here on Intel though, and again has underperformed the Dow by 8%. Activision Blizzard has had quite a sell-off in the last few weeks. We see that in the weekly chart. Here we are on the daily chart now, medium-term bearish. We've given up really about 15% outperformance in in a matter of days. Had a very bad week last week, and making new lows there, and downside targets of 17%. So we're seeing that. Of course, you can do this on any stock. We can then look at the underperformance today, and we're seeing Hasbro down quite significantly, down at 6.5%. And that's really again pushing their underperformance to worse than the Dow this year. Still got downside targets, and we're medium and long-term bearish now. And taking a look at Tesla, here we see Tesla's down nearly 1%. That 250 level, very critical on Tesla. We would start to make lows not seen for 18 months since the beginning of last year. So Tesla looking worrying. Of course, the on-balance volume really indicating selling pressure there. We've underperformed by 22% on versus the Dow this year. Netflix also down 1.3%, and again we're seeing some of the outperformance that we had at the start of the year really now just starting to be given up. So that's also quite key. Just taking a look at the stocks in general, Alphabet's one that we have been worried about, having fallen through the cloud on the medium-term chart, up 0.5% this morning. Amazon actually up 1/3%, still just testing their support level, and of course Apple, the giant in the index, up just under 2/3%, holding its own there. Facebook also has been a worry of late, up 0.5% this morning, but medium term very clearly bearish and potentially long term bearish soon. Has underperformed by 17% this year, and we are seeing downside targets on Facebook, so that's quite key as well. Just taking a look at some of the others, Microsoft up 1/4% this morning, looking a little bit stronger. So just a good one to keep an eye on. Taking a look at the US Dow, we start by looking at the Dow. You can just see the performers here as well. Intel, the best performer in the Dow Jones 30. McDonald's up over 1%. We're seeing a lot of the tech stocks here. Cisco, Apple is being driven. IBM is Microsoft, all really being driven by technical Nasdaq stocks at the moment. Looking at the underperformance, we've got United Technologies 1.8% lower, and significantly now making a bearish trend on that medium-term chart. Still have upside targets here, but we've got a new downside target of 108. That's 14% lower. So we're seeing that. Also seeing American Express lower, and oil companies. So Chevron lower. Goldman Sachs are lower as well, starting to look quite worrying on that long-term chart. JP Morgan Chase. A lot of the banks had reported quite good results last week or two, but we are seeing on the medium-term charts they are turning bearish. So interesting. We see ExxonMobil here as well. So more and more we're seeing a rotation in the performers here, and that's quite significant. Exxon really has been underperforming there for some time. Looking at the S&P 500 index, again this data all coming from Yahoo Finance. Just looking out for the best performers, we're seeing Jacobs Engineering up 5.8%, Advanced Micro Devices up 5.3%. So we are seeing some quite beefy performances here. Gap up quite strongly, and Macy's and Nordstrom. So we're seeing retailers all performing quite well at the open. Looking at the worst performers in the S&P 500, we're seeing, well, we've got Hasbro down 5.6%, Bristol Myers Squibb down 5.3%. So we are just seeing across the board still some pretty poor performances, despite the market opening a little bit higher. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.